Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I'm honored to address you today on behalf of the group of independent eminent experts on the implementation of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action, DDPA. We continue to view the DDPA as the most comprehensive global framework for combating racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, and as an essential tool to advance the International Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. I present to you today the outcome of the Group 11th sessions, which was held on 28th of April to 1st May 2025, and the Group Comprehensive Study on the implementation of the DDPA. During the session, the group held 3 thematic discussions addressing racism against Asian and people of Asian descent, monitoring DDPA implementation through data and indicators, racism as a root cause and consequence of armed conflict. We also met privately with all regional groups of states, OHCHR, staff, civil society. During the thematic discussion on Asian and people of Asian descent, it was noted that this was the first UN thematic discussion focused on this group. Participants emphasized the lack of a clear and inclusive definition of Asian and people of Asian descent, which undermines effective advocacy. A more intersectional approach is needed, taking into consideration caste, colonial legacies, geography, and economic disparities. During the discussion, it was also highlighted that processes of securitization, where policy issues such as migration, health, and climate change, among others, are portrayed predominantly as security threat, eroded trust between Asian communities and government institutions, stoked social division, encouraged vigilantism, online hate, and mainstreamed acceptance of xenophobia. Recommendation for this thematic area included a comprehensive study on Asian and people of Asian descent with input from communities, states, and UN actors, an OHCHR fellowship program for Asian and people of Asian descent aligned with the existing fellowship for people of African descent, a general recommendation on Asian and people of Asian descent by Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, a recommendation to the Human Rights Council treaty monitoring body and special procedure mandate holders, as well as regional human rights mechanism and bodies, to take note of the human rights risks and racialized impact of securitization processes and explore opportunities for early warning and prevention of human rights violation. On our second thematic discussions on monitoring implementation, we emphasized the importance of disaggregated, consent-based data to monitor racial inequality and the effectiveness of anti-racism measures. What cannot be measured cannot be improved. In this regard, we recommend OHCHR should create a dashboard illustrating straight states' acknowledgement and apologies for colonialism, slavery, and related atrocities. States should develop and use indicators and independent monitoring mechanism with input from affected communities. Moreover, in view of the group mandate, including its advisory role to the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly and its full membership, the group suggested to prepare an annual report on the implementation of the DDPA. A review of activities undertaken by various stakeholders at national, regional, and international level should be done by independent UN experts, such as the distinguished members of this group. During the final thematic discussion on armed conflict, we discussed how racism and related crime, apartheid, persecution, genocide occur before, during, and after conflict. Peace agreements often fail when they ignore underlying racism. In this regard, we recommended the following. Peace agreement, whether temporary or long-term, should prohibit and address effectively racism and racial discrimination. Effective measures must include action to recognize and address international crime, in particular the crime against humanity of apartheid and persecution that are derived from racism and racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, recognizing of crimes against humanity rooted in racism. Inclusion of anti-racism advisors in all human rights councils, investigative bodies. I now move to the group comprehensive study on the implementation of DPPA. The study supported the commemoration of 60 years of ISAD in 2025 and 25 years of DDPA in 2026. Though limited by time and resources, the study reviewed DPPA implementation at national, regional, and international level. The group considered the study to be an initial step towards enhancing the implementation of program of action as there are challenges beyond those covered in the study. The group recommendations for national level included states should formally acknowledge and apologize for slavery, colonization, apartheid, and genocide. They should include DDPA references in all anti-racism measures and national reports to treaty bodies. Provide update information on financial resources allocated to implement anti-racism measures. Establish independent monitoring mechanism with civil society participation. At regional level, we recommended that regional bodies should adopt measures in line with the DDPA and include reference to it in their work. With regard to international level, the group recommended all human rights mechanisms should reference the DPPA in their input. OHCHR should include the DPPA in all their relevant publications, trainings, and briefings. To implement the recommendation of the Human Rights Council Advisory Committee to develop an analytical and methodological framework, including indicators as a tool to monitor and assess progress towards racial equality. To expand the UN internal anti-racism strategy to include external programming as seen in the UN strategies on gender, youth, and disability. Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, our group remains deeply concerned by growing resistance to anti-racism effort worldwide. The DDPA and ISAD offer a solid UN framework to counter this trend. We are mindful of today's geopolitical tension, the UN financial constraint, and the UN 80 reform initiative. However, the group recommendations must be reflected in Human Rights Council and General Assembly resolutions. As regular budget funding is unavailable, we urge government and stakeholders to provide extra budgetary support for our thematic work. Now, more than ever before, we need political will and leadership to turn commitment into actions that make real difference in people's lives. Thank you.